For over 20 years, the Battlefield franchise has captivated the gaming world. Critical to its success is the more than 100 multiplayer levels which remain towering examples of nostalgia, quality, and unique design. With so many to experience, the maps of the Battlefield series keep that enduring legacy alive. This is their incredible story. Everywhere I go, all I hear is, "Where are the Battlefield 6 maps? Gravity, when are you doing the BF6 maps?" Fine, we're finally doing the BF6 maps, but since I'm writing the damn things, I'm doing the easiest one first. Welcome to Saints Quarter, the tranquil neighbor to Iberian Offensive, both located in sunny Gibraltar. Tucked away from battle and downright gorgeous, it offers some of the best infantry combat in the game. And I would hope so, because it is tiny. It's the smallest offering in Battlefield 6, sure, but now also of the entire franchise. There are only a handful of comparable examples, but the closest is definitely Danya Fortress from the Battlefield 3 Close Quarters package. The map is so compact that the major points of interest need to be called out as van, fountain, house, or tree, and it's really up to you and I to name locations in between. It turns out that being the smallest map in the series is actually really good. Many of Battlefield's smallest layouts are prone to a mountain of major issues, so there must be tangible differences why Saints Quarter actually works. It comes down to three factors: structure, game modes, and intent. Saints Quarter has a surprising amount of playable space, driven by its use of alleys and elevation changes. The total number of pathing options wraps around the map like a web, often meeting at three-way intersections, minimizing the chance to be caught off guard. There are only 2 buildings that can be considered enterable or important, as the few others are simply connectors between streets. Of the major structures, only one of them in the center offers any sort of verticality or power position, and yet it cannot control the map flow. This presents a mostly readable experience for players who are able to predict which corners or hallways to watch, while providing the meaningful cover and flanking potential not found on a linear layout. This labyrinthine concept also does wonders for engagement distances and sightline limitations. The many twists and turns break up the firing angles, while the scale prevents players from camping for lengthy periods. The map can be broken up into 5 sectors, determined by areas of distinct gameplay or art style. In the south, the first of these is Main Street. This area comprises the longest stretch of road that can be found, with sightline blocks offered by a few vehicles, including the van parked just in front of the fountain. This is where an objective is located on King of the Hill and domination modes. Here, players engage at the furthest distances allowed, pushing for control of the protection in the center. 4 direct paths access the main road, along with the ability to leap up to the elevated fountain square from the road below. Among these includes one of the 2 enterable apartments, providing a bit of extra safety, and a small vantage point into the square and the adjacent complex. The connected fountain is a highly contentious location, providing cover and hiding spaces for those fighting on the capture point, while being incredibly vulnerable from fire from across the street. Just to the north, the central 3-story structure has a direct influence on the actions in the street and fountain below. Each floor maintains 1 apartment, heavily decorated, and with a set of windows capable of limited vision over the surrounding intersections. Heavy interior fighting takes place within the halls and stairwells, or trying to barrel your way inside one of the apartments. The 3rd floor contains the only accessible rooftop on the map. This is a strong position as it offers the best view of the fountain to the south, but also toward the alley due north. Yet it remains directionally limited, and with a gas tank on the roof, capable of being largely reduced to rubble. The whole structure guards the central part of Saints Quarter, but doesn't restrict movement. With 3 entryways along with the first floor windows, it is a landmark where intense battles take place. Players looking to camp and hold the building are common, placing C4, claymores, or deployable cover to block the stairs. The first floor kitchen is yet another site for a King of the Hill objective. along with the exposed roof. Should the building begin to prove too fortified, much of the facade and flooring can be destroyed, offering a great spectacle on a small map, but also with practical benefits. On the west, players can find a drainage canal carving its way down past a walkway and under a small bridge. This area is officially known as Blocks, and is where a capture point can be found in Domination and King of the Hill. Elevation changes significantly down the canal slope, allowing for a lengthy sightline from the upper edge along the main street. It is not without obstructions, as a small footbridge crosses near the objective area. Access to the zone is found in 4 primary entrances, along with a back alley which loops along the western blocks. It tends to be a fairly predictable location based on where you choose to enter from, but players always need to be wary about new enemy respawns coming from behind, especially on the north and south. A crack in the concrete wall on the upper side can be excellent protection for a mean firing angle. The western loop is one of the area's best places to hide and counterattack, since there is space enough for an alcove and brick walls surrounding a large tree. This is particularly effective at eliminating clumps of reinforcements as they run in from the low side. A small staircase bottlenecks the topside access, but players can actually leap over the garden wall for a sneaky way in. Overall, the canal is among the most dangerous zones of Saints Quarter, owing to the minimal cover aside from the canal walls, bridge, and plants to hide behind. On the northernmost edge, a small section of buildings makes up a series of independent side streets. This ultimately forms its own zone, both from a lack of major objectives and as a location of 2 major team spawn points, grouped tightly near the intersections. The ability for these roads to connect to each primary battle site makes it important to understand and control, as enemies tend to lurk around these corners often en masse. The lengthy central street is mitigated by a set of stairs near the bottom and multiple junctions preventing a fortified firing line. A note needs to be made about the northernmost alleyway, the key pathing option for flanking. Although largely straight, its elevation changes sharply, up and down, limiting direct sightlines and making any encounter on it sudden. Players do camp on the central hill behind the rubble pile, but given the rotating enemies and map scale, this is never a position that lasts long. Finally, the eastern side of the map is defined by its plaza, dominated by a large tree. No fewer than 4 primary paths connect to this open space, along with an additional alleyway looping along the furthest edge. The terrain is broken into 4 tiers, with a patio being the only other piece with set dressing worth mentioning. The walls of the elevation jumps provide the most protection, but the large bushes are excellent for covering hiding players. The approaching alleyways can be watched by protected firing angles, but the sheer amount of them make it a team effort to cover them all simultaneously. This tends to make the zone chaotic and easy to attack. When moving west from the lowest platform up the stairs, players need to be attentive to the windows on the central building, as enemies lurking inside are a continuous threat. And that completes the tour of the whole map. Simple and yet elegant. A limitation of verticality, along with mostly curved streets for minimal sightlines, provides an action-packed arena where no conclusively dominant position exists. Even the central house has its many weaknesses. A minimal amount of objects and clutter makes it readable and focuses attention on footsteps, not entrenchment. This is already a marked difference from a linear grind like the block from Battlefield Hardline. On account of its scale, it can only support Battlefield 6's smallest game modes of Team Deathmatch, Squad Deathmatch, Domination, and King of the Hill, all limited to 16 players. As a result, if you can't find the map during rotations, this is because you need to select these close quarters experiences from the main playlists, or select those specific modes from the custom filter and include it. This is the second profound contrast, and even one that differentiates it from the Battlefield 3 close quarters levels. By not allowing an absurd amount of players, the modes play well and spacing feels mostly appropriate. Unlike all of those other small maps in the series, there is no expectation to drop 32 or 64 players within and feel the effects of body blocking or grenade spam or the struggling server stability. It knows what it wants to be, needs to be, and that's it. This has, without question, annoyed many players who enjoy the action and aesthetic it offers and desire a scaled-up version for the main conquest modes. However, the reality is that this already exists. A scaled-up version of Saints Quarter literally becomes Iberian Offensive, and that would be a duplicate experience. Truthfully, I have the same desire, but I think it boils down to something about the color palette and lighting of Saints Quarter that is just so much more appealing. Gameplay, without question, is intended to be fast-paced, a spawn-and-go kill dynamic that borders on the style of the arena shooter rather than Battlefield. With no vehicles, or HQs, or spawn protection, it is certainly akin to that other franchise. I want to be clear that this doesn't make the map or experience bad. It is just its intent to appeal to that demographic, and give Battlefield players something different in the process. For myself, I use the map as a great place to help power level new weapons because of the short engagement times, and as a great rapid place to warm up for the night. Quite a number of assets can be destroyed on Saints Quarter, which is nice considering how limited the environment is and adds to the evolving nature of the game. As mentioned earlier, the centrality and defensive position of the main house often makes it a battleground. Despite the looming presence, it isn't impregnable. The building is prone to major destruction. The front facade can be brought down, exposing players inside, and the roof can largely be shattered by explosives or the gas canister placed on the edge. While this is the main instance of destruction, it is commonly found elsewhere in predictable places. As a result of its size, spawn points are the only major problem it has. All small maps share this problem due to a lack of area to place respawning players. On Saints Quarter, this can be on the extremes, as during Team Deathmatch and Domination, the constant rotation of players makes any respawning enemy liable to be quickly encountered or even witnessed in the process. The spawn logic of the map should intentionally try to place players away from combat or flip placements for the team when the majority of enemies get close to it. However, this sometimes just doesn't happen. On King of the Hill, these primary spawn locations not only become recognized, they become predictable. Sometimes you can be on the receiving end, spawning into the entire enemy team. Other times, the logic will overlap and you spawn alongside an enemy. During still others, you can get the jump on the entire enemy team as it respawns. It comes across as random, sometimes flipping spawn locations for the slightest incursion, while other times not changing for several minutes, pinning down one team on a single corner of the map. While this is problematic in King of the Hill on many map layouts, it is keenly felt here because of the minimal scale. This is by far the greatest point of frustration. The only other annoyances might be the tendency to encounter claymores, which are constantly laid down in the narrow passages, and the sheer lethality of shotguns, notorious for plowing through enemies at corners or in buildings. Saints Quarter does not really offer anything substantially unique to Battlefield 6, which is sometimes a difficult thing to admit. The map is assuredly inspired by, and a continuation of, the legacy of the Battlefield 3 close quarters levels. Arguably, it performs even better due to the player limitations, and structurally remains excellent at what it needs to do. However, most other BF6 maps feature compacted layouts of the larger whole cordoned off for these smaller game modes. Developing one exclusively for this purpose is an interesting choice. In this case, the level works because it offers the fastest time to action of any in the game, and because the gameplay loop is extremely satisfying. It isn't linear, it isn't grindy, it isn't forced. It's just action on a small scale. Want to run and gun around a great layout that's easy to learn and understand? It's here. Your favorite defensive building gets blown up, or you have a bad round. You reset and go again. Train yourself and test your weapons on one of the most reliable maps to do it. That is Saints Quarter. The beautiful aesthetic is just a bonus.